Hello, welcome all for today's session. I will start with a recap quiz. SAA. This will be mainly for autoscaling groups and elastic load balancer that we have covered in last week. I see 7 people there and only 6 people on the Kahoot, but we'll start now. And I pasted the game pin, so please feel free to join. Yeah, if you're doing it for the first time, you need to answer it. The question will be displayed on the PPT, and you'll have to answer it on the Kahoot. So we'll start. The first question is all about due to the change in recent copyright restrictions, we need to block access from certain countries. So we need to to block the access from certain countries. So the best way to do is at the CDN level, which is Content Delivery Network, and Amazon Content Delivery Network is CloudFront, and hence the correct answer is option C, which is use Amazon CloudFront to serve application and deny blocked countries. We can do it even with the ALB application will listener rules, but then we'll have to know each and every IP address and we'll have to block through the IP address. So this is a way you can do it for the IP address. So if it is for a specific incoming IP address, use the ALB listener rules to block those IP addresses. But if it is at a global level, which requires denying access to a specific country or something, that will be done at the CloudFront level. Yep. So 90 seconds for the question. This question has 2 right answers, so please choose 2. Last 25 seconds left, and this question has 2 right answers. Yep, so most of you got it right. The correct answers are B and D. As it is a layer 4 level, means it is a TCP, hence network load balancer, as we discussed in the last session. If it is layer 7 at the application level, it will be application load balancer. If it's a TCP UDP level, it will be a network load balancer, which is layer 4. And if it is for the classic EC2 network, then it will be classic load balancer. So B is one of the right answer, and D is obviously we'll have to configure the auto-scaling groups to add or remove instances in multiple availability zones because we need to make it highly available. So with that, we'll move on to the next questions. If anyone has joined late, please join the Kahoot using the KMIT pin 11387. 20 seconds left. Yeah, again, most of you got it right. The correct answer is C, because using elastic load balancer, you cannot balance load between multiple regions. So it can be done within multiple availability zones in a single region, but if it's multiple regions in different availability zones in different regions, it's not possible. So in option C, it was availability zone in US East 1 and availability zone 2 in US West 1, so which are different regions. And the question was which following configurations are not allowed. So in multiple regions, it's not allowed. So, okay, there's some change in the scoreboard. Sushila climbing up to the top. And Zanshu is doing great with all the first three questions right. Question 4. Twenty seconds left. Yeah, again, most of you got it right, which is the option C. So here, because it is a web application layer, so it has to be an option either C or D, because we need an application load balancer. It should not be a classic load balancer or a network load balancer. So it has to be between C and D, which is right. Now the question comes is whether we should be using WAF, which is web application firewall, or shield. And I know we have not covered this, but web application firewall, as the name mentions, it is mainly for a firewall for preventing you attacks, for example, cross-site scripting attacks or your SQL injection. All of those can be held at a WAF layer. A shield is mainly for preventing DDoS attacks. So DDoS is distributed denial of service attacks, and shield is mainly for that. So anywhere is it about DDoS, then it will be shield. Anywhere it's about anything like cross-scripting sites or SQL injection or any other firewall settings, it will be WAF. Moving on to the next question. Let's see if there's a change in the scoreboard. AG coming up again. Okay. So let's move on to the next question. Okay. So yeah, maximum of you got it right. This has to be network load balancer backed by Autoscaling group. You cannot back it by a spot fleet because if it's a bastion host, then means you are having a session into your uh, private network EC2 instances, and that can, in case if it's a spot fleet, then if the price changes and the servers is taken away from you, then the session will get disruptions. And as there has to be a resilient without any disruption, it cannot be using a spot fleet. So it has to be auto scaling with instances in multiple availability zones. Option C also seems to be correct because it is backed up by existing servers, but again, it will not be resilient if it is not auto scaled. We'll move on to the next question now, and let's see if there's a change in the scoreboard. Shitanshu is still holding first position by a margin, and Prasad onto the second, and Anil on the third. Good enough. Question number 6. Halfway through, 45 seconds left. Yeah, 4 of you got it right. So as we need to hook in between before performing the pre-activation status. So option A, that schedule action, we will not be able to use schedule action to hook in between to a wait state and launch a custom script. Schedule action is mainly for, uh, if you remember during the demo that we have seen, it is to change the min, max, and desired capacity, which will help you in increasing or decreasing the number of servers based on a schedule, not for any custom script. For any custom script, we'll have to use a lifecycle hook, and there is a nice diagram in the user guide that how we can make it to the wait state, run a custom script. So option C is the correct answer. Going on to the next question, the scoreboard remains the same. Question number 7. So anyone who is joining now, please feel free to join the Kahoot, even if it's for last 3 questions. It'll be fun. The game pin is 11387. 30 seconds left. Yeah, correct answer is 4. Sorry, correct answer is D, which got 4 people right. So here we need to change the settings, right? And as if you remember what we have discussed in the previous session, uh, once you create a launch configuration, we cannot edit it. We can only create a new launch configuration, and a new launch configuration can be attached to existing auto scaling group. So that takes out your option C. Then it can be only option D. Launch configuration modification is needed because the overall settings are changing because the instance type needs to be updated. So you need to create a new launch configuration with the new instance type and attach that launch configuration to the existing autoscaling group. So option D is the right answer. So let's look at the scoreboard. AG back again in game, and seems like he's closing in the difference between the top contender Shitanshu. That's great. And now question number 8. Thirty seconds left. Okay. So it seems like this was a trick question for everyone. So only one person got it right, which is the option A. So here few concepts needs to be understood. The first thing is that your application load balancer cannot use EC2 based health checks. It's only auto scaling group that use EC2 based health checks. Application load balancer, if you go into the health check tab in the AWS console, you have a way to have health checks directly from ALB. So it has to be ALB based health check. Your auto scaling can do the health check directly from EC2 or from ALB. So that takes out your option B and D, because in B and D, both your application load balancer is using EC2 based health checks. So you can scratch off B and D. So now there are options A and C that are left. So the current problem right now is that ALB is removing an instance whenever it is detected as unhealthy, but autoscaling group fails to kick in. And that is mainly happening because your autoscaling is actually using EC2 based health check, and EC2 has become, is responding, but it has not been yet registered with application load balancer, and application load balancer is using ALB based health check. It's like EC2 is up, but let's say the server in it is not up. So you're not able to access, let's say, a health.htm or index.html. And health's your application load balancer health check uh, is failing, but your auto scaling group health check is passing because it is rightly pinging the EC2. So the correct answer is option A. Option C is the way to configure it in order to avoid this problem. So both your auto scaling group and application load balancer, if they'll be using ALB based health check, then this issue would never come. So option is the correct answer and the root cause of the problem, and option C is the solution. B and D are not possible. Hope that helps, and let's see if this changes the scoreboard. And not much, but Sushila in top 5 is a 4. That's good. Okay, now let's go on to the next question, which is question number 9. Thirty seconds left. Oh, only again one person got it right. Okay, so let's understand the question, what it is saying. So the question says that there's a specific application which is performing at its peak performance when the CPU utilization is 50%. So we need to ensure that the number of EC2 instances that are running should be in a way that the average CPU utilization should be 50%. So we need to kind of track this metric of CPU utilization, and we need to target this, that overall CPU utilization should be 50%. And now, as we understand, there are multiple scaling policies: target scaling policy, simple scaling policy, step scaling policy, or scheduled scaling policy, or even you can do it manually. So I see most of the people have given answer as D, which is configured autoscaling group to use a CloudWatch alarm triggered on CPU utilization threshold of 50%. Yes, that can be done, but it's not required because we do have autoscaling group scaling policies in its own. So we can set up a scaling policy in a way that when the CPU utilization is above 50%, we should be able to add, and when it is below, we should be able to remove. And that's why the scaling policy is. So doing it through a D is a overhead. So it has to be an option between A, B, and C. Now for that, we need to understand the different types of tracking policies. And let me do one thing. Let me bring up the user guide so that we can understand it once and for all, because this is actually important. So why D is overhead? Because your auto scaling group already provides this internally so that you do not have to configure anything extra. In your management console, you can do it directly. So let me do one thing. Let me, even before going here, let me do this. So here, if I go to EC2, I believe this is an important concept which we have spent some time last week, but needs a more deeper understanding. If I go to, I just hope I've not deleted the resources. Yeah, I have auto scaling group. If I go to automatic scaling, here if you see, I can add a policy. So instead of creating a CloudWatch metric for doing everything, we can do it directly from here. We can add policy. We can say it is a target scaling or step scaling or simple scaling. So here we say as simple as this, this was the question exactly, that the target average CPU utilization should be 50%. And that's pretty much. So if we create this, then auto scaling group will ensure that in case if it finds that the overall CPU utilization is going uh, above 50, it's going to add an instance. If it's going to go below 50, it's going to remove an instance. So now let's go to the user guide to understand what exactly target scaling policy is. With target scaling policies, you select a self-scaling matrix, set a target value, as we see that we can do. The EC2 creates or manages CloudWatch alarms. So it does it's on your behalf. It creates and manages a CloudWatch alarm so that you do not do it on your own. That trigger the scaling policy and calculates a scaling adjustment based on the metric and the target value. The scaling policy adds or removes capacity as required to keep the metric at or close to the specified target value. So the question was that it performs at peak when it is 50%. And we need to ensure that it remains at its peak performance. So indirectly, it is saying that it has to be remained at 50%. And this is what exactly target tracking policy would do. It is going to ensure that keep the metric at or close to the specified target value. Okay, now we can go through this to understand in detail, but I would like to quickly go to step and simple scaling, that why in this specific scenario, step and simple scaling are not the right option. So through step and scaling simple scenario, we can choose scaling metrics thresholds for the CloudWatch alarms that trigger the scaling processes that we can do. You can define how scaling groups should be scaled when threshold is breached for a certain number of evaluation period. So while we are doing the simpler step scaling purpose, we provide the steps at what steps we need to do. But here it was only one single metric, 50%, which we had to track. And if you're targeting one single metric, it is target. And again, if you see here, we strongly recommend you that you use a target tracking scaling policy to scale on a metric like average CPU utilization or count. It is strongly recommended even in the official documents to use target, but we still have the option for more complex scenarios to add the additional policy as a step or simple scaling. And you should be going through these also, differences between step and scaling policies, because there might be questions in which you have to understand that it is not a target. We need to use step or simple, but why step and why simple? So please go through this official documentation. It's as simple as its definition, and there are some useful points here which is going to help you. Hope that clarifies. If not, please feel free to ask more question. Muthu, does that answer your question? Oh, good enough. Great. So as you said, these different type of policies have been provided to ease uh, your work instead of you creating your own CloudWatch alarms and stuff. And those policies can be made as complex as you wish. Okay, now let's move on to the last question, which is question number 10. And before that, let's see if there's any change in the scoreboard. Yeah, I think only Sutanshu got it right, and he has got a way ahead in the lead, which is good. Last question. 30 seconds left. Okay, no one got the answer correct, and that's strange. And I know this is a trick question because we have not covered this, and there's not everything that we'll be able to cover.
Okay, close it.
Okay. So here, I, I hope everyone understands what is cross-zone load balancing. It is like when a load balancer is balancing the load multiple across availability zones. So you have EC2 instances spread across multiple availability zones, and your load balancer is configured the, to load balance between these EC2 instances. So by default, it is enabled for application load balancer, and it is not enabled for network load balancer. And you will be able to find these in FAQs or even the user guides. And these are the places where probably you'll have to go and read the FAQs and the user guides to get these kind of answers correct. So, or when you do the hands-on lab, you will be able to get these options. When you create a network load balancer on your own, you'll have the option to enable cross-load balancing, load balancing because it is disabled by default, and vice versa when you create the application load balancer. So for these kinds of questions, the option is yours. Do as much hands-on as possible. That's the best way. Or go through the FAQs or go through the user guide. And I don't think it's going to change the scoreboard at all because no one got it right. So for the podium, Prasad in the third place, Anil Gupta at second, and Sudhanshu at first. I think we had only 6 or 7 participants today. And we have runners up as Sushil and Surya Kiran. So thank you guys.